over 4 decades from first concrete to grid connection. A European flagship reactor over a decade late. 2 corporate giants, Areva and Westinghouse, destroyed by projects they couldn't deliver. This is the record of an industry that once built reactors in under 5 years. The West didn't lose interest in nuclear megaprojects. It lost the capability to build them. That story starts with a half-finished plant in Tennessee. In 1973, the Tennessee Valley Authority broke ground on Watts Bar Unit 2, aiming to expand nuclear capacity in the American South. The project advanced alongside its twin, Unit 1, as part of a national drive for large-scale nuclear construction. But by the mid-1980s, a wave of regulatory changes and cost pressures swept through the industry. Construction on Unit 2 stopped in 1985, with the reactor roughly 60% complete and $1.7 billion already spent. The unfinished plant was sealed and left to weather decades of dust and humidity, a silent reminder of a halted era. For over 20 years, the site remained in limbo. Equipment aged in place, blueprints yellowed, generations of engineers and tradespeople retired or moved on, taking with them the tacit knowledge needed to finish what had been started. When TVA finally decided to restart work in 2007, the world had changed. The utility hired new contractors, updated safety systems, and faced a regulatory environment shaped by decades of evolving standards. The original 5-year completion plan proved optimistic. It took nearly a decade and more than $4 billion in total investment before Watts Bar Unit 2 was connected to the grid in October 2016. This was not a story of technical failure, but of lost continuity. A half-built industrial asset sat untouched for a generation, then required a new learning curve just to finish what had already begun. Watts Bar Unit 2 stands as the last American reactor to reach commercial operation before the next wave of new builds, an emblem of how easily industrial memory can slip away when construction pauses for too long. In the decades following World War II, the United States and France built nuclear power plants at a pace that now seems almost impossible. Between the early 1960s and the late 1970s, American utilities ordered more than 100 reactors, with most projects moving from first concrete to grid connection in 5 to 7 years. France, facing the shock of the 1973 oil crisis, launched an even more ambitious program. The government directed its national utility, Électricité de France, to standardize on a single reactor design. This approach enabled French crews to repeat the same build process dozens of times, creating a fleet of nearly identical plants. By the mid-1980s, France operated the world's largest concentration of pressurized water reactors, with construction times routinely under 7 years from start to finish. This industrial rhythm depended on repetition and the accumulation of experience. Crews learned from each project and applied those lessons to the next. Supply chains matured around predictable orders, and a generation of engineers and tradespeople built careers moving from one site to another. In both countries, the learning curve was visible in declining construction times and cost per megawatt. Then, a series of high-profile accidents, 3 Mile Island in 1979 and Chernobyl in 1986, triggered a long pause in new construction across the West. For nearly 30 years, few new plants were started. The learning by doing loop broke. Knowledge that had once been passed down on job sites and in workshops faded away. By the time the next generation of projects began, the industrial memory that once made rapid, repeatable construction possible had largely been lost. In 2003, Finland's TVO signed a fixed-price turnkey contract with Areva and Siemens for Olkiluoto 3, the first European pressurized reactor ever attempted. The deal was pitched as a way to deliver cutting-edge nuclear technology with cost and schedule certainty. Construction began in 2005, targeting commercial operation by 2009 and a total budget near €3 billion. What followed was a cascade of technical and managerial problems that would stretch the project timeline to 2023 and inflate costs to around €11 billion. Foundation concrete did not meet specification, forcing early rework and delays. Welding quality fell short of the required standards, leading to further disruption and regulatory intervention. The project's complexity was compounded by a vast network of subcontractors, many of whom lacked experience with nuclear-grade requirements. Instrumentation and control systems, a critical safety feature, became a multi-year point of contention with the Finnish regulator, STUK, which refused to sign off on key systems until late in the process. As delays mounted and costs spiraled, the relationship between TVO and the Areva Siemens consortium broke down. Both sides entered years of arbitration, with final settlements requiring Areva to pay €450 million in compensation. The financial damage contributed directly to Areva's collapse as an independent company, forcing a state-led restructuring in France. Olkiluoto 3 stands as a case study in how first-of-a-kind complexity, fractured supply chains, and the risks of fixed-price contracting can overwhelm even the most ambitious industrial efforts. Construction began on Flamanville 3 in December 2007, with planners aiming for a 2012 completion. The project quickly ran into difficulties. The original €3.3 billion budget grew to more than €13 billion, with some estimates reaching as high as €23 billion when including financing and indirect costs. Delays stretched far beyond the initial 5-year schedule, and fuel loading did not begin until more than a decade after the first concrete was poured. Technical setbacks exposed deeper problems. The reactor pressure vessel head, forged at Le Creusot, was found to have carbon segregation, pockets of excess carbon that compromised the toughness of the steel. This flaw was not isolated. Audits uncovered that Le Creusot had falsified quality records for decades, with irregularities affecting hundreds of nuclear components across the French fleet. As Flamanville 3 neared completion, inspectors discovered weld defects in the secondary cooling circuit. 33 welds failed to meet standards, forcing extensive repairs and adding further years to the timeline. The weld issues, combined with the forging scandal, highlighted a breakdown in quality assurance and supply chain discipline. France, once the model for standardized, repeatable nuclear construction, now faced the reality that its most prominent builder could not deliver a single new reactor without major setbacks. Plant Vogtle Units 3 and 4 in Georgia represented the first new nuclear construction in the United States in more than 3 decades. The project centered on Westinghouse's AP1000 design, a Generation 3 plus reactor that was supposed to set a new standard for modular construction and cost discipline. When the project launched in 2009, the owners projected a total cost of $14 billion and a commercial operation date of 2016 for Unit 3 and 2017 for Unit 4. By the time Unit 3 delivered power to the grid in 2023, the total expenditure had risen to over $30 billion, with Unit 4 following in 2024 and the final tally exceeding $36 billion including financing. Westinghouse, locked into fixed price contracts it could not fulfill, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in March 2017. Its parent company, Toshiba, posted losses exceeding $6 billion and was forced to sell off core assets, including its memory chip business. The shockwaves went beyond Georgia. In South Carolina, the parallel VC Summer expansion was abandoned in July 2017 after $9 billion had already been spent. The unfinished site left ratepayers responsible for billions in stranded costs, and state and federal authorities pursued criminal charges against executives for misleading investors and regulators. These failures showed how the risks of first-of-a-kind construction, fragmented supply chains, and rigid contract structures could overwhelm even the largest firms. The collapse of Westinghouse and the abandonment of VC Summer left the American nuclear sector with a diminished supply base, a shrinking workforce, and a legacy of stranded capital. Hinkley Point C received final approval in 2016, with plans to deliver electricity by 2025. Since then, the budget has nearly doubled, with completion now projected for the end of the decade. The financing model centres on a contract for difference, guaranteeing a strike price of £92.50 per megawatt hour in 2012 prices, indexed to inflation. By 2025, this will approach £133 per megawatt hour, drawing criticism as the most expensive electricity ever contracted in Britain. While the project remains unfinished, the same EPR design is already being commissioned for Sizewell C, leaving investors and policymakers to navigate persistent delivery risk and escalating costs. South Korea's Baraka project in the United Arab Emirates delivered 4 APR 1400 reactors within a schedule that Western projects have not matched. The build relied on a single, proven design, repeated across all units. Construction times averaged under 5 years per reactor, with the first unit reaching commercial operation in 56 months. China has maintained a steady pace as well, completing dozens of reactors by repeating established designs and keeping its supply chain and workforce active. Both countries fixed regulatory requirements before construction began, avoiding costly mid-project changes. The difference lies not in unique national traits, but in continuous building, standardized processes, and experience accumulated through repetition. Across Western nuclear construction, the usual learning curve ran in reverse. Instead of costs falling with experience, they rose as projects multiplied. The long pause in new builds after the 1980s broke the chain of skilled trades and eroded the heavy forging capacity needed for reactor components. Nuclear-grade supply chains atrophied, leaving only a handful of qualified suppliers. Design changes, once ironed out before ground was broken, now occurred mid-construction, compounding delays and cost overruns. Fixed-price contracts, intended to control risk, instead transferred unmanageable exposure to vendors, driving several into bankruptcy. The underlying loss was not just of technical know-how, but of the entire industrial ecosystem, workforce, suppliers, and project management discipline. Rebuilding this stack, not just ordering new reactors, is the first step for any country seeking to restore credible delivery capacity. Today, Western industrial capacity faces a test it once set for others. As energy systems shift and megaprojects return, the ability to deliver complex infrastructure on time and on budget is no longer assumed. Institutional memory, once lost, is not easily regained.